The day began like any other autumn Friday in London, October 31st, 2025. But this wasn't about Halloween. This was the day the numbers finally stopped adding up. At 8 a.m., the headlines hit. UK debt auction fails. Pound plummets. Bank of England calls emergency meeting. The city's usual rush was replaced by a nervous, electric tension. People stared at their phones, fear growing with every update. The UK Treasury tried to sell its debt, gilts, but investors refused or demanded sky-high returns. The auction failed. For a major economy, this was a financial heart attack. The world no longer believed Britain could pay its bills. In Whitehall, panic set in. Emergency calls, frantic meetings, but the problem was too big for quick fixes. Years of borrowing had caught up. Tomorrow had arrived, and it wanted payment. The government's silence was deafening as panic spread. For ordinary Londoners, the crisis became real. A radio report, a push notification, a conversation on the tube. The pound's value crashed in currency shop windows. The cost of imports, fuel, food, was about to soar. The storm that had been brewing in financial markets had finally made landfall. This was Black Friday, the day Britain's credit ran out. The invisible threads holding the economy together had snapped, loudly and without warning. The headlines were no longer abstract. They were a direct threat to every household. The belief that everything was under control vanished in a single morning. The silence from Downing Street was a stark contrast to the noise of panic erupting everywhere else. The crisis was no longer distant. It was at the kitchen table. The financial storm had arrived, and no one was safe. This was the day Britain's credit ran out. In the City of London, panic was instant. The FTSE 100 plunged, traders shouted, and billions vanished from pensions and savings. Computer systems executed one command: sell everything British. The failed debt auction triggered a total loss of confidence. Investors worldwide dumped UK assets. Bond values collapsed, interest rates soared, and the pound tumbled. The UK, once a safe haven, was now treated like a high-risk market. Inside the Bank of England, leaders faced a grim choice: raise interest rates to save the pound, or risk a deep recession. News channels ran non-stop coverage. People watched their pensions shrink in real time. The chaos in the city was now a direct assault on every household's security. The country held its breath, waiting for leadership that seemed to have vanished. Why did this happen? The answer? £2.9 trillion, the UK's national debt. For years, cheap borrowing funded public services and crises. But the world's faith finally shattered. Think of it like a credit card. As long as the bank trusts you, you can keep spending. Lose that trust, and you're cut off. International investors saw the UK's debt, weak growth, and political instability, and walked away. The government's borrowing costs spiked. That means less money for hospitals, schools, or higher taxes for everyone. The pound's collapse made imports, oil, food, electronics, more expensive, pushing up inflation. The crisis in the bond market became a crisis in the cost of living. This wasn't sudden. Debt had been growing for years, warnings ignored, problems left unsolved. Politicians promised growth, but the underlying issues, aging population, low productivity, reliance on foreign capital, were never addressed. The £2.9 trillion question was never answered, just passed down, a ticking time bomb. On this day, it finally exploded. The music, which had played for decades, stopped. The cost of living crisis was now in every home. The government's credibility was gone. The world's trust had vanished overnight. The UK was out of time. The chaos in the city hit every home in Britain. Mortgage rates soared overnight. Banks pulled deals, leaving families in limbo. A typical mortgage now cost hundreds more each month. Home ownership became a nightmare. Small businesses faced higher borrowing costs and rising prices for imported goods. Many froze hiring, cut investment, or prepared for layoffs. Supermarket prices jumped as the pound fell. Essentials, bread, milk, cheese, became more expensive. For struggling families, the choice between heating and eating became real. The financial crisis arrived at the kitchen table. This wasn't just an economic crisis. It was a crisis of security and well-being. The belief in a stable, fair life was shaken to its core. The government's failure had immediate, painful consequences. The language of markets was now understood as less food, a colder home, and an uncertain future. The storm had reached every living room. This reckoning wasn't sudden. It was decades in the making. Debt swelled after the 2008 financial crisis, then Brexit, then COVID-19. Each crisis added more debt, but growth stayed weak. Warnings from watchdogs and economists were ignored. Leaders focused on short-term promises, not long-term reality. Ill-judged tax cuts and political instability shattered market trust. The UK's debt-to-GDP ratio soared, and the world lost faith. The crisis of October 2025 was the inevitable result of years of denial. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. This is a story about trust. For centuries, Britain's promise to pay was as good as gold. That trust allowed cheap borrowing and funded the nation's prosperity. But trust is fragile. Political missteps and mounting debts sowed doubt. Investors asked, "Is the UK stable? Is there a credible plan?" The answers faded and doubt became panic. Markets turned in hours. The UK went from safe haven to pariah. Restoring trust is now the nation's most urgent task. Rebuilding a reputation is far harder than destroying it. Without trust, borrowing stays expensive, the pound stays weak, and crisis becomes the new normal. The economic battle is, above all, a battle to be believed again. Britain's crisis echoes those of Greece, Italy, and even its own past. Greece's debt crisis led to brutal austerity and lasting scars. Italy's high debt and weak growth kept it on the brink, saved only by the Eurozone's support. In 1976, Britain begged the IMF for a bailout, forced into deep spending cuts. The lesson: markets always force a reckoning on governments that live beyond their means. Today, the UK's debt is far larger, and global markets move faster. When trust is lost, choices narrow dramatically. The path ahead is painful adjustment for years of mismanagement. The ghosts of past crises haunt Britain's present. The world is watching and remembering. With credibility shattered, the government faces only hard choices. Option 1. Deep austerity. Drastic cuts to public services, pay freezes, and job losses. Option 2. Raise taxes. Higher income tax, VAT, and new wealth taxes, risking slower growth and an exodus of talent. Option 3. Print money. Monetary financing, risking hyperinflation and destroying the pound. Each path brings pain. The goal: convince the world the UK can live within its means. There are no easy answers, only sacrifices. The government must choose its poison. The public will feel the impact in every aspect of life. The nation's future depends on regaining trust. The world is watching Britain's next move. The stakes could not be higher. There's no quick fix. The road to stability will be long and painful. The immediate task: stabilize markets and commit to a credible fiscal plan. But firefighting isn't enough. The real challenge is building a sustainable future. Politicians must be honest about trade-offs. No more fantasy economics. The burden must be shared fairly, or social cohesion will fracture. This is a test of Britain's sense of fairness and unity. The goal is to restore trust, not just with markets, but with the British people. This crisis could be a moment of renewal if hard truths are faced. The choices made now will define the nation's future. The whole world is watching.